I'm on shift. You can't be in here.
That was Darnella Renee Cousins, 31 years old, 4 years behind that console. One decision, or the deliberate refusal to make one, left a family barricaded inside their own home while she sat there handling a personal call. A mother was on the other end of the line, whispering into her phone so the intruder wouldn't hear her. And the person whose entire job was to send help just didn't. Within 48 hours of her arrest, investigators pulled 63 logged dispatch records from her workstation, delayed responses, rerouted calls, 2 complete disconnections. Every single incident traced back to her login. Every single one on a night she was confirmed to be sitting right there. The family she left on that line that night still can't sleep with the lights off. Here's what most people don't think about when they dial 911. They don't think about who's on the other end. They don't wonder if that person is having a bad day, or is distracted, or has simply decided that this particular call isn't worth their full attention. They just dial, and they trust. That trust is the entire foundation of how emergency services work. It's baked into every part of the system: the training programs, the radio towers, the backup protocols, the shift rotations. All of it exists for one reason, so that when you call, someone answers. And when someone answers, help comes. The system was built on that promise. What it was never built to handle was someone on the inside deciding quietly over months that certain voices on the other end of the line just weren't worth the effort. That's what this case is really about. Not a dramatic heist, not a complicated scheme. Just a person who was handed one of the most important jobs a community can offer and chose, again and again, to look away. Tonight, we're going to walk through exactly how that happened. How a woman who was once praised in her performance reviews became the reason a family spent 27 minutes hiding in the dark, waiting for help that never came. How a pattern of small, quiet failures built into something that a court of law would eventually call a crime. How does someone entrusted with the most desperate call a person can make become the very reason help doesn't arrive? That's what we're here to find out. If stories like this are important to you, hit subscribe. We're here every week. Darnella Renee Cousins grew up in Greensboro, North Carolina, third of 4 kids. Small house, shared bedrooms, and a mother who worked long hours in hospital administration just to keep the lights on. Her mother, Patricia, was the kind of woman who handled everything herself: bill disputes, insurance paperwork, housing complaints. If something needed to be sorted out with an institution, Patricia was on the phone doing it, calm, firm, and persistent until someone on the other end gave her an answer. Darnella watched all of it. She watched her mother spend 45 minutes on hold with an insurance company after a claim got denied. She watched her dial a housing office 3 days in a row before someone finally called back. She watched how quickly things could change depending on who picked up the phone. How one helpful voice could solve a problem in 10 minutes that an unhelpful one had been dragging out for weeks. From a very young age, Darnella understood something that most kids her age didn't think about at all. Institutions have gatekeepers, and gatekeepers decide who gets through. For Patricia, that was just a frustrating fact of life, something you worked around, something you pushed through with patience and persistence. But for Darnella, growing up and watching from the other side of those conversations, it planted a different kind of seed. She wasn't focused on how to get through the gate. She was watching the person holding it. She was an average student, solid enough, not exceptional. Teachers described her as observant and quietly confident. She didn't chase the spotlight, but she always seemed to know exactly what was going on around her. After high school, she spent a couple of years moving between jobs, a retail position, a short stint doing data entry for a logistics company, a few months at a call center that she quit after 3 weeks. None of it stuck. None of it gave her what she was looking for. What she was looking for, though she probably couldn't have named it clearly back then, was weight. She wanted a role that carried real importance, something where her presence behind a desk actually mattered. The call center had come closest. She was good on the phone, good at staying composed when callers were upset, but it was selling internet packages. There was no gravity to it, no stakes. She found what she was looking for in a brochure for the County Emergency Communications Training Program. It was sitting in the waiting room of a workforce development office she had gone to for an unrelated reason. She picked it up, read it cover to cover, and took it home. She was 26 when she applied. Her mother remembers the conversation clearly. Darnella sat down across from her at the kitchen table, the same table where Patricia used to make her calls, sort her paperwork, fight her battles with a phone pressed to her ear, and told her what she wanted to do. "I want to be the person people call when everything goes wrong." Patricia said she was proud, and she was. There was nothing in that sentence on that evening that sounded like anything other than a daughter who had grown up watching her mother fight for their family and decided she wanted to spend her life helping people do the same. It was the right instinct, pointed in the wrong direction. And it would take 4 more years before anyone realized the difference. The training program was 16 weeks long, and Darnella took it seriously. The curriculum covered everything: call intake procedures, radio communication protocols, how to manage multiple active incidents at the same time, how to stay calm when a caller is screaming, how to extract usable information from someone who is too panicked to speak clearly. It was demanding work, and a meaningful number of candidates washed out before the final assessment. Darnella didn't. She completed every module, passed every evaluation, and when the multitasking assessment results came back, a key benchmark that measured how well a candidate could monitor several situations simultaneously without losing focus, she scored in the 89th percentile. That's not a perfect score, but it's a strong one. Strong enough to signal that this was someone who could handle the pace of a real dispatch floor without falling apart. She was hired by the County Emergency Communications Center shortly after certification. Her starting salary was $38,400 a year. For Darnella, who had spent her mid-20s cycling through jobs that led nowhere, it felt like solid ground for the first time. She had a desk, she had a headset, she had a login that gave her access to the full dispatch system, every incoming call, every active unit, every address flagged in the county database. She was finally on the other side of the phone. Her first year was unremarkable in the best possible way. She showed up on time, she followed protocol, she handled difficult calls without escalating them. Supervisors noticed that she had a steady voice, the kind that didn't waver when a caller was falling apart on the other end of the line. That's a skill that can't really be taught. Either you have it or you don't. Darnella had it. By the end of her second year, her performance review read, in part, "Cousins demonstrates composure under high call volume and exhibits strong protocol adherence." That language might sound dry and technical, but inside an emergency communication center, it means something real. It means that when the floor was loud and the calls were stacking up and newer dispatchers were starting to make mistakes, she wasn't one of them. She was steady. She was reliable. She was exactly what the role required. That review was enough to put her on the radar for advancement. By year 3, she had been promoted to senior dispatcher. The title came with a modest pay increase, a shift in her scheduling priority, and one additional responsibility that carried more weight than any of the rest. She was trusted to train incoming hires on call triage. That meant sitting beside brand new dispatchers, walking them through the system, showing them how to assess a call and decide how quickly it needed a response. She was the one teaching other people the job. Think about what that means for a moment. The same institution that had once been just an idea in a brochure she picked up in a waiting room was now trusting her to shape the next group of people who would sit behind those consoles. Supervisors brought new hires to her desk. They pointed at her and said, essentially, "Watch how she does it." She was, by every measurable standard, a success story. That's important to hold on to as this story moves forward. Because what comes next isn't the story of someone who was always headed for disaster. It's the story of someone who had genuinely earned her seat and then quietly made a choice that would hollow out everything she had built. It started on a Tuesday night. The time was 11:47 p.m. The dispatch floor was quiet the way it gets in the late hours. Not silent, never fully silent, but slower. The calls that come in after 11 on a weeknight tend to follow a certain pattern. Noise complaints, minor fender benders, the occasional confused caller who isn't sure if what they're seeing outside their window is actually worth reporting. The energy on the floor drops, the pace loosens, and for a senior dispatcher sitting through the tail end of a long shift, the last hour before clockout can feel like it stretches longer than all the hours before it combined. The call that came in at 11:47 was flagged as a low-priority welfare check. The caller was an elderly man, slightly confused, hard to follow, circling back over the same details without landing on anything specific. He wasn't reporting a crime. He wasn't in immediate danger. He was worried about a neighbor he hadn't seen in a few days, and he wanted someone to go knock on a door. That was it. Under normal protocol, a call like that gets routed to active patrol. Not as an urgent response, no lights, no sirens, but it gets assigned. A unit swings by when they have a gap. Someone knocks on the door. The neighbor is usually fine. The caller sleeps better. The system works the way it's supposed to. Darnella didn't route it to active patrol. Instead, she moved the call into the non-emergency queue, a secondary category reserved for situations that could wait or that might be handled through other channels. It was a small adjustment, a few keystrokes. From the outside, if anyone had been watching, it might not have even looked like a deliberate choice. It could have looked like a routine categorization call made by a tired dispatcher at the end of a long shift. But here's what makes that moment significant. According to investigators, who later reviewed her activity logs in detail, Darnella paused on that call for nearly 2 minutes before making the routing decision. 2 minutes is a long time to sit on a low-complexity welfare check. Long enough to read it twice, long enough to think about it, and then she moved it, not up, not to active patrol, but sideways into a queue where it was unlikely to be touched before morning. Then she waited. Not for a response. Not for a supervisor to question the routing. She waited to see if the system would flag it. Emergency communications software is built with automatic escalation triggers. Calls that sit unassigned past a certain threshold are supposed to generate an alert. It's a safeguard, a backup, a way of catching exactly this kind of thing. The flag never came. The call sat in the non-emergency queue. Patrol never picked it up. No supervisor pulled the log. No alert fired. The elderly man who had called in, worried, a little confused, trying to do right by his neighbor, never heard back from anyone that night. At midnight, Darnella logged off her workstation, gathered her things, and walked out to the parking lot. The drive home was 12 minutes. She had done it hundreds of times. Nothing about that night looked any different from the outside. She had just moved one call, adjusted one routing decision, tested one small gap in a system she had spent 3 years learning from the inside, and no one noticed. Over 14 months, the behavior becomes a system. Calls she finds low credibility get buried. Calls that require extra coordination get disconnected. Victim 1, Marcus Webb, 67, called reporting a break-in, placed on hold, call dropped. Burglar made off with his late wife's jewelry and his medication. Victim 2, Tiana and Okafor, the home invasion call, barricaded with 2 children for 27 minutes while the call sat unassigned. Tiana later testified she sang to her kids to keep them quiet. Victim 3, an anonymous caller reporting a domestic disturbance, disconnected twice. Third call went to a different dispatcher. Help arrived in time, but only barely. Ends on Tiana Okafor's face during her victim impact statement. If you've made it this far, hit subscribe. This is the kind of story that deserves to be seen. Nobody was looking for Darnella Cousins specifically. That's the part worth understanding before anything else. The audit that unraveled everything wasn't triggered by a complaint or a tip or a supervisor with a gut feeling. It was a routine quarterly review, the kind of procedural check that communication centers run on a regular schedule, the kind that most of the time turns up nothing more serious than minor documentation errors and the occasional misfiled report. This time, it turned up something that didn't fit. The analyst running the audit that quarter flagged an anomaly buried inside a call log from 6 weeks prior. 2 separate calls, both originating from the same GPS location, had been disconnected within the same hour. Not dropped due to poor signal, not transferred, disconnected, meaning someone on the dispatch end had ended the call, and both disconnections were traced back to the same workstation. That detail alone wasn't enough to launch an investigation. Calls get disconnected for legitimate reasons. Equipment glitches happen, but the analyst noted it, flagged it in the report, and passed it up the chain. A shift supervisor, a woman named Carla Hendricks, who had been with the center for 11 years, pulled the full workstation log to take a closer look. What she found stopped her cold. The pattern didn't start 6 weeks ago. It stretched back over a year. Delayed responses, calls rerouted into non-emergency queues without clear justification. Disconnections that had no corresponding equipment error logged alongside them. Hendricks spent the better part of 2 days going through the records carefully, cross-referencing timestamps and call categories and routing decisions. By the end of it, she had flagged 63 incidents that she couldn't explain through normal operational error. She brought the file to Internal Affairs and handed it over without saying much. The log spoke for itself. Internal Affairs took the workstation data and matched it against employee login records. The question they were trying to answer was straightforward. How many of these 63 flagged incidents occurred during a session where a specific dispatcher was actively logged in? The answer came back with a clarity that left little room for interpretation. 41 of the 63 incidents fell within Darnella Cousins' active login sessions. 41. Across 14 months, on nights when she was confirmed to be sitting at that console. But the piece of evidence that shifted the investigation from an internal review into a criminal matter was not the workstation log. It was her phone. Investigators submitted a request for her personal cell phone records as part of the broader review. What those records showed was specific and damning. During the window of the Okafor home invasion call, the 27 minutes that Tiana Okafor and her 2 children spent barricaded in the dark, waiting for Darnella Cousins' personal cell phone was active on an outgoing private call. She wasn't away from her desk. She wasn't dealing with a system issue. She was on her personal phone while a family was on the other end of the dispatch line, waiting for someone to send help. That was the moment the case changed shape entirely. A meeting was scheduled. Her supervisor and an internal affairs officer asked her to come in before her next shift. When she arrived, she was walked into a side office, informed that she was being placed on administrative leave effective immediately, and asked to surrender her access badge. They didn't tell her what they had found. They didn't need to yet. She arrived at 8:14 a.m. The morning was ordinary in every visible way. The parking lot was filling up with the early shift. A coffee cup sat on the hood of someone's car. The glass doors at the entrance caught the flat gray light of an overcast Wednesday morning and threw it back dull and colorless. Darnella Cousins walked across that parking lot in a gray jacket, her lanyard already around her neck, her badge swinging slightly with each step. She looked like someone who had made this walk hundreds of times. Because she had. 2 investigators were standing just inside the entrance. Her shift supervisor, Carla Hendricks, was with them. The body cam footage from that morning shows Darnella approaching the doors and slowing slightly when she sees the 3 of them positioned there. But she doesn't stop. She pushes through the door and opens with something casual, a comment about the schedule, a question about whether there's a briefing she wasn't told about. The footage is clear enough to see the expression on her face in those first few seconds. She is almost smiling. The body language of someone who assumes this is a minor inconvenience, an administrative thing, something that will be sorted out in 10 minutes and forgotten by lunch. One of the investigators introduces himself, states his unit, then he reads the charges aloud. Misconduct in office. Willful neglect of duty. 2 counts, tied directly to the Okafor home invasion call and a second incident from 8 months prior. The smile doesn't fade gradually, it just stops. One frame she's present and composed, and the next something behind her eyes goes very quiet. She stands there for a moment that the footage makes feel much longer than it probably was, and then she says it. This is a mistake. The investigator doesn't raise his voice, doesn't shift his posture. He looks at her evenly and says, "The logs don't make mistakes, Miss Cousins." She doesn't respond to that, not with words. There's a pause, 3, maybe 4 seconds, and in that pause you can almost watch her run the calculation. What she has available to say, what the logs actually show, how far denial is going to carry her from this point forward. The answer she arrives at, apparently, is not very far, because after that pause, she goes silent, completely silent. The kind of silence that, in a room full of investigators, says more than most answers would. They walked her back outside. The cuffs went on in the parking lot. The same parking lot she had just crossed 90 seconds earlier, with her lanyard swinging and her expression loose and easy. 2 dispatchers arriving for the early shift were cutting across the lot when it happened. The body cam catches them in the background, slowing down, taking in the scene. They are young, newer hires, both of them. They stand there for a moment, not quite sure where to look, and then they keep moving, because there is nothing else to do. Those 2 dispatchers will sit behind consoles for the next 20 or 30 years. They will train people. They will make thousands of routing decisions, and they will carry the image of that parking lot with them for every single one of those shifts. Inside the entrance, just past the glass doors, Darnella's lanyard lay on the floor where it had slipped from her neck during the walkout. It was still there an hour later. Nobody touched it. The trial didn't take long. That's often how it goes when the evidence is mostly digital. Clean timestamps, clear login records, a cell phone log that places her on a personal call during the exact window in question. There isn't much room to build a defense around data that specific. Her legal team argued procedural inconsistencies in how the audit was initiated and questioned whether the routing decisions reflected criminal intent or simply poor judgment. The jury didn't find that argument convincing. Tiana Okafor took the stand on the 3rd day. She spoke quietly and without drama, which somehow made it harder to listen to. She described the night of the home invasion in plain, simple terms. The sound of someone trying the back door, grabbing her children and moving them to the interior bathroom, calling 911 and being placed in a queue, waiting, whispering to her kids to stay low and stay quiet, calling back and being disconnected. The 27 minutes that passed between her first call and the moment a neighbor, not a dispatcher, not a patrol unit, a neighbor, finally called the police from their own phone and got a response. Then the prosecutor introduced the drawing. Tiana's daughter was 7 years old by the time the case reached trial. At some point during the months following that night, as part of her sessions with a child therapist, she had drawn a picture. It showed a woman and 2 small figures inside a dark box. Outside the box was a telephone. The telephone had an X through it. The prosecutor submitted it as evidence of psychological harm without saying much about it. He didn't need to. The courtroom was very quiet for a long time after it was shown. The judge's sentencing statement ran for several minutes, but the line that made it into every news report was this one: "You were not merely an employee, you were a promise." He was speaking directly to Darnella when he said it. She was looking at the table in front of her. Whether she was absorbing the words or simply waiting for them to stop is impossible to know from the footage. The sentence was 3 years, with eligibility for parole at 18 months. She was permanently barred from employment in any public safety role. Civil restitution of $14,000 was ordered payable to the Okafor family. The certification she had earned at 26, the one that had given her access to the most vulnerable calls a person can make, was listed as permanently revoked in the state registry. Not suspended, not under review, permanently revoked. It's a public record. Anyone can search it. It will be there long after everything else from this case has faded. In the months following the conviction, the county overhauled its quality assurance system entirely. The quarterly audit model was replaced with real-time monitoring software that flags anomalies as they happen, rather than weeks later. It was a change that should have been in place already. It took this case to make it happen. The Okafor family moved out of the house. Tiana volunteers now at a victim advocacy center 2 evenings a week. She doesn't talk publicly about that night very often, but she shows up. She keeps showing up. And Darnella Cousins, who once told her mother she wanted to be the person people called when everything went wrong, she became something else entirely. She didn't pull a trigger. She didn't break down a door. She just didn't press a button. And that turned out to be enough to destroy everything she had built and leave marks on people she will never have to look in the eye again. Next video. The bank teller who thought $80,000 in small withdrawals would go unnoticed. It didn't.